I was still in uniform when the doctor said the word that quietly changed everything. He didn't dramatize it or soften it. He simply said that without surgery, I was risking permanent damage. I looked down at my leg, my knee so swollen the fabric pulled tight, stretched like it was holding back something ugly. The pain wasn't screaming anymore. It had sunk deeper, heavier, the kind that stays with you. I stepped outside the clinic and called home, my phone warm against my ear, my boot half unlaced as I leaned against the wall trying not to put weight on a leg that didn't feel like mine anymore. My father answered sounding relaxed, distracted, like I was interrupting something pleasant. I explained everything carefully, injury, surgery, urgency, cost, and even told him I'd pay it back. There was a pause, then my mother sighed on the other line, not with worry but annoyance. My sister laughed. Then my father said calmly, almost kindly, that they'd just bought a boat and this wasn't a good time. That was the moment something inside me went completely quiet. The injury itself wasn't dramatic. It happened during a routine training exercise we'd done dozens of times. I remember the sound first, a sharp, wet pop that didn't belong in a human body. Then heat. Then the ground coming up too fast. Pain in uniform is something you learn to manage, but this wasn't that kind of pain. This was the kind that steals your breath and replaces it with static. I tried to stand and my leg folded under me like it wasn't mine. A medic knelt beside me immediately and told me not to move, his voice sharp because he knew this was serious. At the clinic, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead while they cut my uniform away from my knee. The swelling climbed fast, the skin tight and shiny, colors bleeding into each other in ways I didn't have words for. The medical officer didn't sugarcoat it. I needed surgery soon. When I asked how soon, her hesitation said everything. If I waited, I was looking at long-term damage, maybe permanent. I nodded like she just told me the weather. The real problem wasn't the surgery. It was permission. The system moved slowly, and the approval timeline was weeks away, weeks I didn't have. The doctor lowered her voice and said that if I could do it privately, I should. She slid a number across the tray. It wasn't even the full cost, just the price of a chance to walk normally again. That night I sat on the edge of my bunk while the barracks buzzed around me with laughter and music, life moving on like nothing had happened. My leg was wrapped thick and elevated, my boot on the floor like it belonged to someone else. I stared at my phone for a long time before calling home again. My father sounded cheerful. I could hear metal clinking in the background. I explained everything again, slower this time. He exhaled the way he always did before saying no and told me I was young and I'd adapt. My mother picked up the extension and said maybe this was a lesson, that I'd chosen this path, that a limp would build character. My sister laughed again and told me I was the tough one, that I always figured things out. I looked down at the blood soaking through the gauze and thought of the doctor's words. Permanent. I told them I understood and I meant it. I hung up without arguing or crying. Something settled in my chest, cold and clear. 2 days later, I was back in my small off-base apartment, moving on crutches, every step a reminder of what was at stake. Pain meds dulled the edge, but not the fear. I ran numbers over and over until they stopped making sense. Then there was a knock at the door. My brother stood there in a grease-stained jacket, exhaustion carved into his face. He took one look at my leg and swore, then said they didn't help me. Not a question. He pulled a wad of crumpled bills from his pocket and pressed them into my hand. $800. He'd sold his tools. I told him he needed those, and he said he needed me walking. My parents had assets and savings and a brand new boat. My brother had nothing, and he gave me everything. I took the money not because it was enough, but because I needed to remember who showed up when I was bleeding. I didn't sleep that night. Old memories I'd buried kept resurfacing. Growing up, roles were assigned early. My sister was the investment. Every failure was temporary, every dream deserved funding. I was the dependable one, the one who didn't ask. When her businesses failed, checks were written without questions. When I needed help fixing my car so I could get to work, my father wrote up a loan contract with interest and had it notarized. They called it building character. What it really built was silence. Sitting there with my leg elevated, it finally made sense. This was never about money. They had money. They just didn't have it for me. I signed brutal loan papers to get the surgery. I woke up wrapped in bandages and metal, pain sharp but clean. The surgeon told me we'd caught it in time. Relief hit me so hard it almost hurt. 3 days later, the first payment was due, and my bank account was nearly empty. I did math that didn't work and considered things I'm not proud of. Then I remembered a lottery ticket I'd bought without thinking. I checked the numbers once, then again. It wasn't a miracle jackpot, but it was enough to breathe, enough to stop being desperate. I didn't tell anyone. I called a lawyer instead, the quiet, expensive kind, and told him I wanted to protect myself and understand my parents' finances better than they did. What he uncovered shocked even him. Their house was over-leveraged, the boat was mostly debt, my sister's business was bleeding money. They weren't wealthy, they were pretending. They refused me $5,000 while burning tens of thousands to protect appearances. I didn't run from it, I bought it. Quietly, legally, precisely. Within days, I owned their debt. They didn't know. They signed contracts they didn't read because people like them never believe consequences apply to them. The first violation was small, just a missed payment and a timestamp. The contract didn't care about excuses. When they walked into the meeting and saw me, reality finally caught up. I didn't yell or insult them. I showed them the truth. My mother cried. My father threatened and then bragged about accounts he shouldn't have mentioned. I listened and reported everything. I walked out without crutches, my leg held. For the first time since the injury, I smiled. Not because I'd won, but because I could finally stand on my own. The fallout was quiet. No screaming, no dramatic scenes, just consequences. My brother owns his shop now. My parents lost the house they pretended was success. And I learned something I'll never forget. Family isn't who tells you to endure pain because it's inconvenient for them. Family is who shows up when you're bleeding. This wasn't revenge. This was balance. And I went exactly far enough.